Have you ever wondered what secrets a seemingly dormant mansion might hold, as if its walls contained more than just bricks and memories? What if I told you that in the heart of city, in a house as old as the Coachella neighborhood itself, a man lies still, a prisoner of a silence that hides a scream? It's not just a man, it's an air, a forced silence, a mystery disguised as an accident. Each stone, each shadow of that mansion has something to say. And while you read these words, someone has already begun to unravel the veil of secrets the Becerra family has been hiding for 15 years. Get ready to dive into a story where whispers become truths, where allies blur and enemies lurk behind every door. This isn't just a mystery, it's a dangerous game of power, betrayal and survival, because when someone starts asking too many questions, sometimes the answer is the last thing they hear. Beth, exhausted and lost in thought, was about to give up. The hospital lights flickered intermittently, while the hum of the monitor beside her marked the rhythm of her resignation. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion after another endless shift. It was the weight of unpaid bills, overdue rent, and the constant worry about her younger sister, who needed expensive medical treatment. While stirring her cold coffee during a short hospital break, her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number illuminated the screen. "We need someone discreet, Beth. Someone who doesn't ask too many questions. Salary, 5 times your current salary. Housing included. Interested?" The text was blunt, without preamble. The sender didn't identify themselves. Beth raised an eyebrow, suspicious. She thought about ignoring it, but desperation was stronger. With a sigh, she replied, "Where?" Minutes later, a second message arrived. A name, Becerra Mansion. An address, Coachella. Beth swallowed hard. Everyone in the neighborhood had heard about that old, mysterious mansion, home to a powerful and reclusive family. Stories about its walls, about strange disappearances, circulated like ghosts among the cobblestone streets. "This can't be real," she muttered to herself, rereading the message. But the memory of the mounting bills, her sister's pale face, and the exhaustion weighing down her body made her ignore her fear. She called the number accompanying the message. A cold, sharp female voice answered, "Camilla Becerra. I hope your answer is affirmative." "Yes, but can you tell me what kind of job it is?" "Care for a comatose patient. Nothing complicated. Basic supervision. Don't worry, you'll receive training and housing. You just need to make sure he receives proper care. Nothing more. Accepts?" The confidence of the voice on the other end of the line made Beth shudder. She swallowed hard. "Yes, I accept." Camilla hung up without another word. Beth stared at the black screen of her phone, her heart racing. What had she just done? The next morning, while packing a small bag with essentials, her neighbor Rose watched her from the doorway. "You going somewhere, Beth?" "I was offered a job as a private nurse. I'm moving today." "Where?" "To the Becerra Mansion." Silence hung heavy. Rose paled. "They say who goes in there never comes out the same, Beth. Be careful." Beth tried to smile, but unease crept under her skin. "I know, but it's an opportunity I can't refuse." The taxi waiting for her in front of the building was old and smelled of gasoline. During the ride, as they drove through the tree-lined streets of Coachella, the driver, an older man with a raspy voice, broke the silence. "Are you sure you want to work there? Many people think twice." "Why do you say that?" "Because that house has secrets. And sometimes those secrets don't want to be discovered," she thought. The car pulled up to wrought iron gates that swung open with a metallic groan. As she crossed the threshold, Mandy felt a chill run down her spine. The mansion was even more imposing up close, with its white columns, dark windows, and a sepulchral silence that seemed to swallow the sounds of the outside world. The taxi driver didn't wait for her to get out. He accelerated and disappeared into the shadows of the trees. A figure in a dark suit approached the front door. Without a word, he opened the car door and regarded her with an impenetrable gaze. "Mrs. Camilla, is expecting you." Mandy swallowed hard, adjusted the strap of her purse, and climbed the steps to the entrance. As she crossed the threshold, the air changed. The scent of old wood and exotic flowers filled the atmosphere, and a massive chandelier hung from the ceiling like a watchful eye. But what struck her most was the absolute silence. No sound, no murmur, only the echo of her own footsteps resonating in the vastness of the place. The air inside the mansion was thick, almost suffocating, as if the walls carried secrets too heavy to bear. Mandy followed the man in the dark suit down a long corridor lined with antique portraits. Each painting seemed to observe her, its painted eyes reflecting silent judgments. At the end of the hall, an elegant figure appeared descending the stairs. Camilla. She wore a beige linen suit, her hair pulled back in a perfect bun. Her expression was cold, flawless, almost sculpted. "Welcome, Mandy," she said in a tone that brooked no reply. "Thanks," Mandy replied, her voice a barely audible whisper. Camilla walked on without waiting for a response. "Come, I'll show you where you'll be working. The rules here are simple. Punctuality, discretion, and loyalty. If you respect them, there will be no problems." As they walked, Mandy tried to memorize every turn, every door, every painting. The house was a labyrinth of dark wood and heavy carpets. The windows were covered by thick curtains that barely let in any light. "Who else lives here?" Mandy dared to ask. Camilla stopped, turning slightly toward her. "The employees and I. Nobody else." "Okay, except for the patient." Mandy swallowed. "Can I know his name?" "Carlos," Camilla replied curtly. "But don't worry about details. Your job is to keep him comfortable." They arrived at a closed door. Camilla took a key from her pocket and opened it, revealing a large room with a heavy atmosphere. A large bed, surrounded by silent machines and monitors, occupied the center. On it, a young man with pale skin and carefully combed hair lay motionless. "Carlos has been here for 15 years, Camilla commented. "A car accident left him like this. Since then, this is his life." Mandy felt a knot in her stomach. Something about that story didn't add up. The man didn't have the typical marks of prolonged coma. His skin was well cared for. His muscles showed little atrophy. "Is he receiving physical therapy?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Camilla narrowed her eyes. "You don't need to know more than you should. Your task is simple. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am," Mandy replied submissively, though inside the questions began to swirl. Camilla closed the door with a click, leaving Mandy alone with Carlos. The nurse slowly approached the bed, observing the details. The perfectly taut sheets, the meticulously ordered medicine bottles, the slight movement of the patient's chest. His eyes seemed to move slightly, as if something inside him were trying to awaken. "Carlos?" she murmured softly, leaning in slightly. The sound of the monitor was the only response. That night, while having dinner at a long, silent table, Mandy noticed how the employees avoided eye contact. She suspected something was amiss, something far from the simple, straightforward explanation Camilla had offered. This was more than just a patient. This was a carefully constructed illusion, and Mandy, the new nurse, was now part of it. The chef, a serious-looking man, murmured as he served her plate, "Around here, asking too many questions can be expensive." Beth shivered, but didn't reply. Going up to her room, she heard a muffled murmur from behind a slightly open door. She stopped, holding her breath, and distinguished a male voice saying in a worried tone, "Camilla won't let anything change." The other voice replied, almost whispering, "What happened 15 years ago can't come to light. If she wakes up, we all fall." Beth silently recoiled, her heart pounding against her chest. The mansion was alive with secrets, and she, unwittingly, had just opened the first door to them. The night passed restlessly. Beth's dreams were plagued with distorted images of faces she didn't remember, and whispers she couldn't decipher. When she woke up, the first rays of sun barely illuminated the room, but she already felt the weight of what she had to do. She got up, dressed quickly, and walked towards Carlos's room, determined to observe him more closely. Opening the door, she found him just as she had seen him the night before. Still, pale-skinned, but without the signs a comatose patient should show after so long. She approached, her heart racing, and spoke softly. "Carlos, if you can hear me, blink." Nothing. The silence was oppressive. She took a deep breath, determined not to give up. "I know something's wrong here. If you can hear me, please give me a sign." For a moment, she thought she saw a barely perceptible movement under Carlos's eyelids, a subtle tremor, almost imperceptible. Her breath hitched. She leaned closer and carefully took the patient's inert hand. The skin was warm, not cold and stiff like that of other patients she had treated. "Carlos, I know you're there. I need you to fight." The door burst open, and Beth let go of the patient's hand, startled. Camilla entered, her expression hard. "What are you doing here so early?" "I was just checking his vital signs," she replied, her voice shaky. "Okay," Camilla said, approaching the bed to adjust a pillow with calculated movements. "Remember, you shouldn't alter anything. Everything is under control." Beth nodded, but while watching Camilla carefully place a pillow, something caught her attention. A small bottle of medication she hadn't seen before. The bottle had a blurry label, but she managed to read one word: sedative. Camilla noticed her gaze and, with a strained smile, picked up the bottle. "Nothing in here is any of your business, Beth." The nurse felt trapped, but disguised it. When Camilla left, she stayed a moment longer with Carlos. The possibility that he wasn't really in a coma was becoming increasingly clear. Later, in the garden, she ran into John, the gardener. She pretended to be admiring the flowers while he pruned some rose bushes. "How long have you been working here, John?" "Since before the accident," he murmured without stopping his work. "And Carlos, what was he like before?" John stopped his work and, after a silence, said, "He was a good man, different from the others, but he asked questions he shouldn't have." Beth felt a chill. "What questions?" John leaned in, his voice low and fearful. "About the money. About the business. After the accident, everything changed, and nobody dared to talk anymore." Before he could say more, a noise behind them interrupted them. Camilla was watching from the patio, her eyes cold as knives. Beth understood she was walking on thin ice, and that each step she took brought her closer to the truth or to danger. Beth spent the night awake, reviewing every detail. Carlos's gaze, the mysterious bottle, John's words. Something was buried beneath the surface, a secret so deep that everyone seemed to fear it. At dawn, I decided to try and get some answers. During breakfast in the main dining room, an uncomfortable silence reigned. The food was served on impeccable plates, but nobody looked up. Mandy left her coffee half-finished and approached the cook, a stout woman named Teresa, who always wore a strained smile. "Teresa, can I ask you something?" she whispered. The woman tensed, her eyes scanning the room before she nodded slightly. What really happened to Carlos? Teresa pressed her lips together. "Here, missy, asking too many questions can be expensive," she muttered barely audibly, and walked away to continue her work. Mandy felt a chill. It was clear everyone knew something, but fear kept them silent. Later, while tidying Carlos's medicine bottles in his room, Dr. Ramiro, a middle-aged man with a grumpy expression, entered with heavy steps. He observed the records, muttered something, and turned to leave. Mandy seized the opportunity. "Dr. Ramiro, do you think Carlos has a chance of getting better?" she asked carefully. Ramiro looked at her coldly. "Carlos's condition is irreversible. Just follow instructions and don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong. But I've noticed his body doesn't show the typical signs of a prolonged coma. His skin, his muscle tone..." The doctor slammed the folder shut. "Don't question the diagnosis. Your job here is to care, not to offer opinions." When he left, Mandy clenched her fists. The truth was there, but nobody wanted to face it. That evening, she decided to look for John in the garden. She found him by an old fountain, pruning flowers as if nothing was happening. "John, I need to know. What questions did Carlos ask?" John remained silent, the sound of the water accompanying his words. He asked about the contracts, about the embezzlement. He suspected someone close. After the accident, his voice was silenced. Mandy shuddered. "And who else knows?" John shook his head. "Nobody talks. Here, fear is the boss." Suddenly a loud bang broke the tranquility. A door slamming shut from inside the house. Camilla was approaching, her footsteps echoing on the marble. "Mandy, I need to talk to you. Now." Mandy swallowed hard. John quickly moved away, leaving only a faint whisper. "Careful. She doesn't forgive." Mandy confronted Camilla in the foyer. "I've noticed irregularities in the medications," she said firmly. Camilla narrowed her eyes. "I warned you about asking questions. Here, you obey or you leave. Do you understand?" "I understand," Mandy murmured, though inside she vowed to uncover the whole truth. Mandy couldn't sleep. Each word from John, each cold look from Camilla, resonated in her mind. She decided she couldn't wait any longer. At the stroke of midnight, with the mansion corridors silent, she got up. She slipped on soft shoes to avoid making noise, and stealthily walked to the late Mr. Becerra's study. The door, usually closed, was slightly ajar. With a racing heart, she gently pushed it open. Inside, moonlight illuminated bookshelves filled with dusty books and papers. Mandy began to search the desk drawers, looking for something that would explain everything. In the last drawer, hidden behind a thick folder, she found an envelope sealed with red wax. Shaky, she broke the seal and took out the documents. The name Carlos Becerra was printed at the top. It was a will. She read it quickly, discovering that, contrary to what Camilla claimed, Carlos was the rightful heir to the entire family fortune. Camilla, on the other hand, would receive a minimal pension. Mandy swallowed hard. Now everything made sense. Carlos had been silenced, so Camilla could keep everything. The sound of footsteps startled her. She quickly hid the will inside her blouse and hid behind a bookshelf. The door opened. A tall, thin figure entered. Camilla. Her silhouette, stark against the moonlight, was terrifying. "I know someone was here," she murmured, her voice low and menacing. Mandy held her breath, wishing she could turn invisible. Camilla took a couple more steps and then went outside, leaving the door ajar. Mandy waited a moment before hurrying out of the office, making sure to leave no trace. Back in her room, she pulled out the will and studied it carefully. The writing was clear. Carlos was to inherit everything. With this proof, Camilla would be exposed. The next morning she found John in the garden. She showed him the document secretly. "Carlos is the rightful heir," she whispered. John crossed himself. "I knew it. But if this gets out, Camilla will do anything to silence us." "We need someone outside this house," Mandy said. "You know someone?" John nodded. "Dr. Alvaro. He was the family doctor before Dr. Ramiro took over. They fired him when he started asking too many questions." Mandy felt a glimmer of hope. "Can you help me find him?" John looked toward the house, making sure nobody was listening. "I can try, but be careful. Camilla is dangerous and has eyes everywhere." While John walked away, Mandy clutched the will to her chest. She knew she was playing a dangerous game, but now she had a card that could change everything. Mandy anxiously awaited John's message, fearing that each step she took was being watched. 3 days later, at dusk, he whispered to her during a stroll through the greenhouse. "Dr. Alvaro has a small clinic downtown. I've left you the address." Mandy took the paper, her hand shaky. She tucked it away and waited for Camilla to be occupied before leaving. With a racing heart, she left the mansion, pretending she was going shopping for supplies. She walked quickly to the bus stop, feeling watched every step of the way. The clinic was discreet, tucked away on a quiet street downtown. Mandy knocked on the door and was greeted by a thin man with graying hair and sunken eyes. "You're Maria?" he asked, almost whispering. "Yes, I need your help. It's about Carlos Becerra." The man paled. He led her into a small office and closed the door. "I knew it," he murmured, burying his face in his hands. Camilla was never going to let the truth come to light. Carlos started to suspect fraud in the family businesses. He asked me for help. When I found traces of progressive poisoning, I was fired. Since then, I've lived in fear. Mandy pulled out the will and laid it on the desk. Alvaro read it carefully, his expression hardening. "This changes everything," he said. "Carlos is the rightful heir. If he wakes up, Camilla loses everything. That's why they keep him sedated. But there's something else. I fear it's not just her. Some key employees and Dr. Ramiro are involved. This scheme is much bigger than you imagine." "What can I do?" Mandy asked, her voice breaking. "We need medical evidence, and we must carefully reduce Carlos's sedatives. If he wakes up and can talk, everything could change. But it's dangerous. Camilla has powerful connections." Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door. Alvaro went pale. "You must leave now. Someone's following us." Mandy nodded, hid the will under her clothes, and slipped out the back door. She walked quickly without looking back until she found a cab. Back at the mansion, fear gripped her. Camilla probably suspected something already. Upon arriving, she pretended everything was normal. Camilla observed her from the stairs, one eyebrow arched. "Where were you?" she asked in a casual tone that hid venom. "Shopping for missing supplies," Mandy replied, forcing a smile. Camilla nodded slowly, but her eyes remained fixed, dark and calculating. "I hope you haven't been sticking your nose where it doesn't belong," Mrs. Teresa said. "Of course not, Mrs. Teresa," she replied, lowering her head. But inside, Mandy knew there was no turning back. She had the evidence and, with Robert as her ally, a chance to change everything. That night, Mandy couldn't sleep. She felt trapped in a web of deceit that only thickened with each step. She wondered if she'd made a mistake seeking the truth. What if Camilla already suspected everything? While looking out her bedroom window, a subtle sound broke the silence. A car pulling up to the mansion. Mandy peered out, holding her breath. She saw a figure stealthily getting out, accompanied by two burly men. She didn't need more to understand. Camilla was fleeing. Mandy raced downstairs, her heart pounding. The front door was ajar. Outside, the cars sped away, disappearing into the darkness. Mandy knew at that moment that Camilla had discovered the truth was about to come to light. Hours later, the police arrived, alerted by Robert. Officers surrounded the mansion, but Camilla had vanished. The house fell into an even denser silence, heavy with fear and suspicion. John approached her, his face worried. "She won't go far. She'll return. Camilla never leaves loose ends." "What can we do?" Mandy asked, feeling a lump in her throat. "Robert's gathering more evidence, but we need to keep Carlos safe until the police act." Mandy's phone vibrated. It was a text from Robert. "Promoter willing to act. Meet at the clinic. But be careful." Mandy showed the message to John, who nodded. "You should go, but cautiously. Camilla has allies." Decided, Mandy took a cab to the clinic. During the ride, she noticed a black car following her from a distance. Her heart beat faster. Upon arrival, she rushed inside. "Robert," she called, entering his office. He stood, nervous, papers in his hand. "Camilla knows we have evidence. If we get Carlos to wake up and talk, everything will change. But she'll try to stop it at all costs." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the clinic's door. Robert paled. "We don't have time. You must return to the mansion. Camilla will come back for Carlos." Mandy nodded and ran out, grabbing another cab. During the ride, she kept glancing in the rearview mirror, fearing the dark car was still following. Arriving home, she found the mansion in an unsettling calm. The employees seemed tenser than usual. Camilla wasn't there, but her shadow lingered, floating like a ghost over everyone. Mandy rushed to Carlos's room. She found him as always, but this time his breathing seemed more rapid. "Carlos, you have to wake up," she whispered, taking his hand. "Camilla's gone, but she'll be back, and this time she's coming for you." That night, a dark storm covered the Coachella sky. Lightning illuminated the mansion's hallways, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Mandy remained by Carlos's bedside, her heart pounding. The thunder's roar was punctuated by the insistent drumming of rain against the windows. Mrs. Teresa entered the room, pale and shaky. "Mandy, the guards say the electricity is failing. The storm is fierce, and they fear someone might take advantage." Mandy pressed her lips together. "We can't leave Carlos alone. If Camilla returns, she might try something." "I'm going to tell John to reinforce the locks," Teresa said, before disappearing down the hall. Minutes later, as if the house itself answered Mandy's words, the lights flickered and died completely. Darkness filled the room, leaving only the faint light of the lightning. Maria shone the flashlight on her phone, aiming it at Carlos's peaceful face. "Hang in there," she whispered. A sharp thud echoed down the hallway, followed by heavy footsteps. Maria tensed, holding her breath. The steps drew closer, confident, relentless. The bedroom door trembled as someone tried to open it. "Camilla," Maria murmured, knowing only she could move with such surety in the darkness. The door creaked open slowly, and a tall silhouette, briefly illuminated by a flash of lightning, appeared in the doorway. Camilla held a small flashlight in one hand and a vial in the other. Her smile was cruel, a reflection of her confidence. "Did you really think you could stop me?" she said, her voice low and sharp. Maria stepped between Camilla and the bed. "Carlos is the rightful heir. If he wakes up, you get nothing." Camilla advanced slowly. "That's why he'll never wake up. Tonight, I finish what I started." The tension was suffocating. Maria searched for something to defend herself, but the only thing within reach was a small vase. She clutched it tightly, knowing it would be useless. Camilla raised the vial, ready to inject its contents directly into Carlos's IV line. But before she could get close, a thunderclap shook the mansion, and a shadow appeared in the hallway. John, drenched from the rain, burst into the room. "Stop, Camilla!" he yelled, charging toward her. She spun around, surprised by his audacity. "You too, John? You, who's been loyal for years?" John raised an iron bar, resolute. "No more, Camilla. This ends now." A brief struggle, a vial crashing to the floor, shattering into 1,000 pieces. Camilla's flashlight rolled across the floor, briefly illuminating the tense faces of those present. Camilla recoiled, furious. "This isn't over," she muttered before running down the hallway, disappearing into the darkness. Maria and John looked at each other, breathing heavily. "We have to protect Carlos," he said, "and call the police. She can't get away this time." The storm continued to rage outside, but inside Carlos's room, the silence was even more unsettling. Maria knelt beside the bed, taking his shaky hand. "Carlos, please, you have to wake up. We don't have much time." John locked the door and barricaded it with a chair. "Camilla won't stop, but now she knows we're ready to fight." Suddenly, Carlos made a slight movement. A tremor ran through his hand. Maria held her breath, squeezing tightly. "Carlos? Can you hear me?" she murmured anxiously. His eyelids fluttered slowly, until his eyes cracked open with an almost superhuman effort. His gaze was clouded, confused, but he was there. "He's waking up!" Maria exclaimed, tears in her eyes. John approached, watching in amazement. "After all this time—" Carlos tried to speak, but his voice was a broken whisper. Maria leaned in, bringing her ear to his lips. "It wasn't an accident." "Camilla didn't act alone," he murmured, each word a monumental effort. Maria recoiled, feeling the ground crumble beneath her feet. "What are you saying?" Carlos closed his eyes for a moment, exhaling with difficulty, before opening them again, with a weak but present determination. "Robert, he was also involved." John frowned. "Robert, the accountant? But he always seemed on the sidelines." "No," Carlos whispered. "He handled everything. The contracts, the embezzlement. Camilla only executed, but he planned it all. If they hadn't poisoned me, I would have discovered everything." Maria felt a knot in her stomach. The web of corruption was more extensive than they imagined. If Camilla was running, Robert still held power. "We have to protect him," Maria said, squeezing Carlos's hand, "and give this evidence to someone who can bring justice." At that moment, loud knocks echoed on the door. A male voice yelled from outside, "Police!" "Open up!" John cautiously approached, slowly opening the door. 2 armed officers entered, followed by the promoter Alvaro had contacted. Rose showed the will, the gathered evidence, and explained what happened. Carlos, though weak, managed to say in a broken voice, "Camila ran, but she didn't do it alone. Robert, he's just as guilty." The promoter nodded, taking notes. "We're going to make sure none of them escape. This case will be a priority." Rose let out a shaky sigh, feeling for the first time that the scales were tipping in her favor. But a quick glance between John and her was enough to know that there were still shadows that could threaten the light beginning to emerge. Hours later, the mansion was swarming with police and forensic experts. Sirens wailed through the night as officers took statements and collected evidence. Rose remained by Carlos's bedside, holding his hand, trembling with a mix of relief and fear. Camila had been apprehended near the airport, trying to flee. Her face, when the police brought her in handcuffed, still held a sardonic smile. As she passed Rose, she muttered almost inaudibly, "This isn't over." But Rose refused to be intimidated. She looked at Carlos, who, though weak, kept his eyes open. "She can't hurt you anymore," she whispered. The promoter approached John and Dr. Alvaro, who had just arrived after learning about the arrest. "We have everything we need to prosecute Camila and Robert, but there's something more. We found hidden documents in the mansion implicating politicians and businessmen. This goes far beyond what we imagined." Rose frowned. "Is it dangerous to continue?" The promoter nodded. "Very much so. But if we stop, everything you've risked will have been in vain." Carlos, in a weak but firm voice, murmured, "We can't let them keep hiding the truth." Rose took a deep breath. She knew they were risking a lot, but she also understood that she couldn't back down. "We're with you, Carlos. We're going to report everything." Camila, listening from her place, laughed coldly. "You don't know who you're messing with." The police escorted her out of the room, their footsteps echoing down the hallway. A heavy silence filled the air. Alvaro turned to Rose. "We must make sure Carlos receives the necessary care and is safe. This doesn't end with Camila." John nodded. "I know a safe place where they can move him while everything is resolved." Rose looked at Carlos, her expression determined. "We'll go together. We won't leave you alone." The following days were a whirlwind of statements, evidence, and veiled threats. The media covered the story of the millionaire who woke up after 15 years in a coma, revealing a web of corruption that reached the highest echelons of power. In the secure clinic where Carlos was recovering, Rose accompanied him every day, helping him with his rehabilitation. His body was weak, but his spirit was unwavering. "Thanks," he murmured one afternoon, holding Rose's hand. "You don't have to thank me," she replied. "You fought to come back. Now we'll fight together." On television, Camila was shown being transferred to prison, but her eyes still held a disturbing spark. Carlos closed his eyes, exhausted, while Rose felt that the story, though finally safe, hadn't reached its end. This was only the beginning, she thought silently, while outside the Coachella sky cleared and a new day dawned with intertwined promises and shadows.